I decided to do the OpenPilot Setup Wizard for you guys. This, as you know, is my 250. I've had a little issues with the right motor, so I'm gonna go ahead and erase everything that I have, redo my whole setup, and take advantage and walk you guys through the OpenPilot Setup Wizard and how I set up my CC3D board on this build. If you're not sure how this build was done and how I put it together, go back to my other videos and kind of get an idea of where I'm at before watching this one. If you're familiar with the builds and you really just want to go through the OpenPilot CC3D setup, then this video is perfect for you. Step 1, super easy. Plug in your USB cable. I already did that, so I don't waste time on there. Have your battery ready, but not plugged in. And yes, please, please, please remove your propellers. You don't want these things connected. It can cause some very big problems later on. And also make sure that prior to starting, you've already bound your transmitter to your receiver and they connect fine. And also that there's no trims. Everything is zeroed out. Make sure that you're completely zero, because you're going to program your transmitter. You're going to program all your buttons, and you're going to program everything else. You should have your hardware all set up and ready by now. You should have your connections all set up and ready. Connections are very easy with OpenPilot. Pretty much just plug them in all from top to bottom. There's a lot of hardware guides online, but there's not a lot of... I was really confused when I initially first set this up. I thought that it had to go for a certain sequence of how you're going to plug the cables in, and really not the case. Just go cable by cable, line by line. Make sure the first 3 are on top, that they're going to power the receiver, and the rest doesn't really matter, because you're going to tell the system what these buttons are and what they do and how they translate in here, which is the best part. So, all right, here we go. Step 1 before getting started, if you're using a Windows 7 machine, I highly recommend that you first plug this guy in, make sure that the computer recognizes it before starting. That way you're not going to have any issues. Alright, let's put you right here. Okay. The reason I have these little cards on the floor is that my floor is not 100% completely flat, and we're going to need this thing to be completely flat in order to do the calibration later on for the gyros. So me personally, I use my phone, and I use a little app called Bubble, which is kind of neat. Shows you what's flat and what's not. So if I go ahead and I place this right on top here, you'll notice that it's not completely 100% flat yet. So I grabbed some cards, I stuck them on here, place this on top, put my phone there, and kind of move it around, play with the cards till I can get as close as possible to 0, because we need to train this board on what 0 is. In this case there, we're kind of popping between 0 and 2, 0 and 2. That's as close as I'm going to get. I'm happy at that point. I'm not going to mess with it anymore. I'm not going to move it. I'm going to go ahead now and start the connection process. Alright, so this is the OpenPilot suite. This version is the 1502 Raging Cajun. So depending what version you have, when watching this video, you might have a newer one. If you do have an older one, please uninstall. Alright, step 1. Make sure that your quadcopter or hexacopter, whatever you're doing with CC3D OpenPilot, it is not connected to the computer. Go ahead and click on the Vehicle Setup Wizard. It's going to let you know, warning, you must remove all your propellers from the device before proceeding. Yeah, here we go. Alright, step 1, we're going to wipe out everything that's in the board and install the latest firmware settings. So make sure the erase all settings is set. When you hit upgrade, it's going to connect real quick, and it's going to let you know to please plug in your device. So we're going to go ahead and click on upgrade. And it says please connect to USB. I'm going to move over here and physically plug in the USB to the computer. It's going to auto recognize the USB, and it's going to start the uploading firmware process. You're going to notice that your boards will start blinking once it starts receiving the information. And it's going to start booting and erasing the board. So it's going to say, please wait. If you get an error during this part, don't just continue. Go back, restart again, re-erase everything, re-download. Make sure that this part goes as smooth as possible, especially on Windows machines. Sometimes the device might disconnect, reconnect, disconnect, reconnect, and cause errors. Alright, in this case, we're good. The board has been updated. Please press next to continue. Okay, here it's going to confirm you're connecting via USB, and it's going to confirm you are using the OpenPilot CopterControl 3D. Alright, in my case, I'm using the PWM. This just means you're going to use one cable per every channel on your system. If you have a digital controller and you can use just one cable for all channels, then pick this one. If you're using a Futaba serial bus, use this one. If you're using a Spectrum satellite, then you use this one. It's your choice. Now, if you do use this one, you're going to have to reboot the board because it has to recalibrate itself. But initially, it uses this one. Alright, here we go. Next. And this is again surface, helicopter, fixed wing, or multirotor. We're using a multirotor. Next. There are different types of builds here. I know that with FPV racers, these are more of an H build, not really an X build. So it's important to understand that this is considered an X. The only H option in here is a hexacopter. This is not a hexacopter unless you are building a hexacopter. My case, I'm going to choose an X. Your case is whatever you're building, you pick in here. Okay, next. Alright, step one. What type of ESCs you're going to be using? You have your rapid ESCs, which are usually your Simon Ks, your BL Helis, and most modern ESCs. If you have a very old ESC, you will go with standard. And if you have the one-shot turbos, which is this is a new update, you pick this one. The one-shots will automatically be detected, and you won't be able to select this unless you already have a one-shot. Alright, and next. Alright, this pretty much gives you a summary of how you're being set up. And if you click on this diagram, it shows you how the wiring should be. Again, don't worry too much of how the wiring is on this end, because you're going to tell the system how to connect it. Just make sure that your initial first pin has the 3, including the power, and then just go cable by cable by cable in line, and then you're going to tell the board how to communicate with your receiver and how to receive the information from the transmitter. And your setup is your number 1 will be clockwise, again if you're using this board. Number 2 is counterclockwise, number 3 is clockwise, and number 4 is counterclockwise. Okay, next. Now, here is where I mentioned earlier where you have to make sure that you're completely 100% flat or as close as possible, because we're going to train the actual OpenPilot sensor to calculate the gyro and accelerometer. Here we go. Now it's going to send and receive the data to the board itself, evaluate what perfectly center is, and it's going to save it. Alright, once you see hit done, hit next. Alright, at this point here, again, confirm. No propellers on the motors. This part here is very, very important. Make sure that you follow it step by step. At this point, you can move around. You don't have to worry about it being flat anymore because it already knows what flat is. So, step 1, you're going to have to agree to all of these. Yes, I have removed the propeller. This vehicle is not powered by any kind of batteries except for the USB, and I have read everything. Okay, so we're going to hit start. We're going to move over, and we're going to connect our battery. And here's our beeps. It determined the height. Now we're going to hit stop. It's going to calculate the load. That's it. And we disconnect the battery. Come on. Yeah, it's a hard battery. There we go. So, setup process is complete. It established the high, it established the low, and it programmed all the ESCs to determine what high and low is. At this point, you hit next. Alright, now, here we're going to go and do the individual motors. This is a good time to test if the motors are rotating clockwise or counterclockwise. If you see by this step that your motors are not clockwise or counterclockwise, take it apart, resolder it, and make sure it goes in the right direction. OpenPilot, the new OpenPilot, does have the option for you to digitally invert the motor and cause it to spin in the opposite direction, but I've never tested that. I'd rather solder it and hardware-wise go in the right direction. So in this step, we're going to reconnect the battery to the unit before starting. Okay, we're not going to need a transmitter at this point. We're not going to need to be leveled. We're just going to need to be connected. All right, hit next. And here's the output value that it's determining, and it's going to start with the first motor. You're going to hit start, and you're slowly going to raise this till the motor starts spinning. There it is. You're going to hit stop. You're going to move to the next motor, which is this one. You're going to hit start, and you're going to move it till the motor starts spinning. Okay, you're going to hit stop. You're going to move next to your next motor. Hit start, drag it up, hit stop. Next motor, start, drag it up, hit stop. Okay, at this point now, it kind of has an idea of what the motor starts are, the lows. We'll do a little more of tweaking, and I'll show you that next. Here, they have a huge list of all types or most types of builds that are out there. You got your Hobby Kings, you have your Blackouts, your Blackout Minis, your DJI 450s. I mean, you really have everything in here you're going to need. Of the popular builds, you got your ZMR 250s, and you have your ZMR 250 Chinese clones, which these are usually with the BL Heli 20 amps. In my case, mine is closer either to the QAV 250 or to the Blackout Mini H. In my case, I think the Blackout Mini H might be a little safer. Mine is a 230 millimeter. It's more like a 250. Mine's about 550 grams, about 490, and my motors are 2280s, more like 1806s. I don't think they have 1806s in here, so I'm not gonna go. Again, these are just recommended settings. You don't have to go exactly to. You don't have to pick one of these. You can tweak it on your own if you're comfortable. That's funny, the Chinese clone. Oh look, 1806, 250, 312 without the battery. 5x3s is a 4S build. Alright, we're gonna go with the Blackout Mini H, which is closer to mine's. Alright, I'm gonna hit next, and I'm gonna hit save. So connect, it'll download all the settings to the device. It'll disconnect it, reboot it, and reconnect it. Alright, so at this point, the vehicle is ready to go. Now we're going to do the transmitter setup wizard. Okay, prior to starting the transmitter setup wizard, disconnect your vehicle completely. Man, these plugs are good. And the reason I say disconnect completely is because it's been for a long time trying to find the transmitter, and it's not going to find it if you just connect it right away. So, step one, plug it in. Step two, connect your transmitter. You should have a solid red light to your receiver. We should be ready to start. Okay, now we're going to go into the transmitter setup wizard. By default, it's going to disarm your motors. They will not turn on. So at the end of this setup, we need to make sure that we tell it how we want it to arm the motors. We're going to hit OK. Step one of the wizard is making sure that you are connected, that your receiver has signal, and we're ready to go. Hit next. Alright, for quadcopters, hexacopters, pick acro mode. Do not choose helicopter unless you're doing a helicopter. Next. Mode 2 or mode 1 or mode 3, depending what you use. If your throttle is on the left hand side, then you're a mode 2. If your throttle is on the right hand side, then you're a mode 1. Pick your specific mode and move on. Alright, now it wants to determine, remember how I mentioned before that it really doesn't matter how you had your wires, because now we're going to train it. So what you want to do here is, if you see the going up and down, move your transmitter up and down, or just up a little bit, and you'll see it stops blinking. And then you notice that your roll stick will start moving. You go ahead and move your roll stick, and Now it wants to connect to your pitch. Go ahead and move your pitch, either up or down, doesn't really matter. Kind of tell it what it is. And then it wants to know your yaw. Move your yaw. Now you've already trained it. Now your mode switch. For those of you that have had Devo remotes and used to using this mode switch on top, you're better off using a mix switch. Mix switch will work right away and you won't have any problems. Now when setting this up, make sure you move your mix switch at least a couple of times, not just once or twice, for it to pick it up. Okay, now if you have any accessories, in my case I'm using the gear as the accessory, go ahead and flick that a couple of times and it'll pick it up. Now if you don't have any other ones set up, just go ahead and hit next. Those are the accessories. Now here, make sure that everything is set to dead center, including your mix switch that we just set if you're using Devo, and your throttle 50%. Okay, then you hit next. Right now it wants you to move everything up and down to determine the maximum range. So that just means go ahead and roll this to every single edge like this. Same thing with this one, roll it all around. Okay, make sure you're back at 50%. And your mix switch all the way up and down. And your auxiliary switches. Do it a couple of times. Sometimes it takes a little bit to pick up. Alright. Alright, so here we're good to go. And we're going to hit next. Alright, now on this one, it wants to determine what your direction you're going. So if you move your throttle up and down, the screen should move up and down. You move left and right, it should move left and right. If you move up and down on your roll, on your pitch, in my case, is reversed. See, my pitch is going up and the screen is showing down. So I'm going to move to my pitch and I'm going to check it. Now when I go up, it goes up. I go down, it goes down. When I go left and right, it goes left and right. So it should be almost exactly what you see there. Flight mode, down, middle, top, middle, bottom, middle, top. Perfect. Nothing else needed to be reversed. I'm going to hit next. Now here, it wants you to test pretty much all your settings. Up and down. Just to determine that everything is working. Alright. And next. Alright. Now, we're at the end of the setup wizard. We haven't saved yet. Prior to saving, what I want to do is set it to always disarm, so that way the motors don't kick on during the setup process. You're going to move it down to, and you could pick whatever you want, but the norm out there is yaw right. That just means that you're going to hold your transmitter yaw all the way right for 3 seconds before the board arms itself. Okay? Go down to your lower right hand corner and hit save. At this point, we are done. At this point, you're almost ready to fly. Prior to doing that, move over to your output, and you're going to notice that all these motors have different start ranges, depending when they started cranking up on each. Normally what happens is that you kind of want to balance them out a little bit. Sometimes they're needed, sometimes they're not, but I would just go ahead and take it based on the highest. Okay, alright, you're all set there, and go ahead and hit save. Alright, at this point, you're ready to fly. Alright, so we're done with the setup process on the screen. Now all is left to do is disconnect from the board and disconnect the power from your device. And we're going to test it. I'm going to go ahead and reconnect it. Okay, it should recognize the receiver. I'm going to make sure that my motor's armed now by going lower left and accelerating a little bit. There it is. A lot of power. Wants to move. Now, if you're starting off and you're seeing you're getting way too much acceleration at 5%, then they're too high. If you see that you're starting off and nothing's winding up on time, then you're too low. In this case, we're at 7% and all the motors are spinning pretty good. Nice and even. 50%. Alright, I'm happy. Alright, that was it for the Setup Wizard. All you have to do at this point is reconnect your propellers, disconnect your USB, and you're good to go.